Hey guys, welcome back to Phys Ed Universe. I'm Coach Polly. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. Typically, I would be giving you a new game or a new activity, but we're in the middle of summer, which means that we've got some new teachers getting ready to start the profession, and we've also got young teachers that have been in the profession, but they're looking for some tips, some things to maybe improve on their classroom from last year. So I'm going to be giving you 6 very practical tips for your classroom. It's not all-encompassing. There are so many different tips and suggestions out there. As a matter of fact, if you're a teacher and you're watching this video, before you leave, please comment in the comment section of this video and just put your #1 piece of advice for new teachers or existing teachers. It'll be great for them. It'll be great for me. I'll steal some of them. So before we get into it, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hopefully you'll find this helpful. Okay, my first piece of advice is probably maybe the most important piece of advice that I can give you as far as your sanity goes anyway. Don't try to talk over your students. I understand, I get it, that sometimes you're going to be trying to teach a lesson, you're trying to give instruction, and kids are starting to talk and they're having their own conversations, sidebars going on. If you just continue to raise your level, your volume, you're gonna be stressed, you're gonna be exhausted. My first couple years teaching, every time kids would start talking while I was talking, I would just raise my volume, and then they'd talk a little more and I'd raise my volume again. By the end of the day, I had a headache and I was tired. So how do you handle this? You have 2 options, I think. You can come up with cues. We have teachers that say things like, all set, and the kids respond with, you bet. Or they'll say check, check, and that means that all eyes are on you. Or you can do what I do, which is just stop talking and I stop teaching. The thing about PE is kids want to be there. They want to play the games. So when you stop teaching, they're not getting to play. And typically that's enough that 1 or 2 kids realize what's going on and they start shushing other kids around them, and eventually you have their attention. It may take a while at first for this to work, but if you do it consistently, it won't take long at all. 10 seconds in, kids realize you're not talking. They start shushing others. Everybody pays attention. I do this every single day, probably at least once a class. Okay, my next piece of advice is to use music. There are several benefits to this. #1, it keeps the energy high in the room. You can also use it as a background cue because when you stop the music, it means that you have something to say. So when the kids hear that music stop, they start to look at you automatically. I will say this, I use Kids Bop because I know there's not going to be curse words in it, but that doesn't mean you don't pay attention to the music. Even without curse words, sometimes there's just music that the message is not necessarily appropriate, at least in my eyes. You make that call for your classroom. But Kids Bop is a good tool. Tip #3, downtime is your enemy. What that means is anytime kids are waiting, they're not playing a game, you're not talking, there's just dead time within the room, they're going to find something to do, and typically it's something that you don't want them to. So plan your transitions within your lesson. For instance, if kids are playing, they're working on ball handling in basketball, and you're about to move them into some kind of ball handling game like dribble tag, that's great. Set that game up while they're still practicing whatever skill. That way, as soon as they're done practicing the skill, you move them straight into the game. Also overplan. So you may think that 2 activities is going to be enough to get through the whole lesson. And you may find that there's 10 minutes left over at the end of the game or at the end of your class where you've done those 2 activities and they're now bored of them. Plan 3. If you think 2 is enough, plan 1 extra. That way, if there is downtime or their energy is not as high, they're not interested in the game anymore, you can move on to a 3rd activity and there's no downtime within your room. All right, tip #4, use 1-word cues. When I explain a skill, I'm going to explain it in detail the first time. If it's ball handling, I might say, hey guys, we're going to dribble at our belly button. We're not going to dribble up here at our shoulder. We're going to use our finger pads. We're going to make sure that our eyes are up, looking around us. But then once we get into skill play and they're practicing that skill, I'm going to use one-word cues like belly button. They know that means don't dribble above my belly button. Or I'm going to say eyes, and they'll go, oh, I got to get my eyes up. Or use your finger pads, and that means that they're probably slapping it with their palm. They don't need a 30-second explanation every time. The first time, it's important. After that, one-word cues are great. Okay, tip number 5 is find some new games. We all have games that we use every year. They're oldies but goodies, and they're great. Please continue to use those. But also find time to mix in new games. So for instance, if you're in a volleyball unit and you're teaching a skill of bumping, maybe each year find at least one new game to practice bumping. Or the way I like to do it is I do 3-week units. So if we were in volleyball, we would do 3 weeks of volleyball. At the end of the 3 weeks, we're going to do what's called a unit break. And that means that we're just going to play some random games. That's a great time to mix in new stuff and keep them excited and enjoying it. Okay, my last tip for you is get to know your students. Look, I get it. You hear that all the time. When you were in college classes, you heard get to know your students, build a relationship with your students. If you're a teacher and you've gone to PD, that's also what you're hearing. It's important, and it's important for several reasons. Number 1, we care about kids. It's important to build a relationship so they know we care. That's why we're in the profession. But number 2, it's going to help you with discipline. When a kid knows that you care about them, you know about their family, you know about their interests, you've expressed interest in them, what you say is going to carry more weight. So when you ask them to do something or to stop doing something, it means more. They're more likely to take what you said and do it. Now, the first month of school is key in this. Those first 4 weeks, they haven't hit their stride yet. They're still excited to be at school. They're still a little bit nervous. They're not acting out. Some of them will, but most of them are not acting out yet. That's a great time to build that relationship and get to know them so that in week number 5 or week number 6, and they are starting to act out, all of a sudden you can ask them to stop doing something and they'll listen. Okay, guys, that's it. That's my 6 pieces of advice for you. If you do those things, you'll never have a single problem within your teaching career. Yeah, that's not true, but hopefully those things will at least help you out a little bit. Don't forget to leave your best piece of advice for teachers in the comments below so that we can all learn from each other. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Until next time, play hard and make a difference.